As many of you know, I started playing the Digimon TCG a few months ago, and I actually made a video documenting the whole thing. I'll link it somewhere in the screen. And since then, some of the questions that I get asked the most in this channel are, what are you playing right now? And what are you excited to play in the future? So in today's video, I'm going to try to answer this, and I will also give you an update on how this Digimon journey is going for me. Also, if you're a beginner, maybe you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made along the way. Now, this first part is not going to be super exciting for a lot of people, and I get that. But the first decks that I played were ST1 and ST3. I don't even have these decks anymore. These were actually the decks that my local store let me borrow when I asked about the game for the first time. And I know they're quite outdated. I think they were kind of the first decks ever, so yeah. But if you're a beginner, I would 100% advise you to start with something similar. And again, I know this might sound like crazy advice, but as someone who started with zero knowledge in any TCG, these decks made me focus on things like timing, effects, mechanics like Digivolution, without any of the complicated stuff and interactions that come with modern decks. Also, as someone who started more than 5 years into the meta, I just recommend you to go back to the beginning and then build from there. I honestly think you're going to have a great time learning from these decks, because I had a great time learning from them with my partner. When I was asking around about playing the Digimon TCG in my local store, the first thing people asked me was, what's your favorite Digimon? Or what's your favorite set of Digimon? And my answer would be something like Skullgreymon and Devimon, Myotismon, Beelzemon, all of that kind of Digimon. So when I first got into the store to actually play the game, one of the decks they had prepared for me was based on the Nightmare Soldiers archetype, or NSO. By the time I started playing, the NSO deck was already a few months old, and I don't think that there were many people playing it. I also don't think it was a meta deck, but in any case, I loved it. I had Piedmon, Myotismon, Devimon, and a ton of other Digimon that I didn't really know, but I loved how they look. And it also introduced me to more advanced mechanics like Ace, DNA Digivolving, or Alliance as I was playing against Rapidmon. I have told this story before, but after those games, people helped me build this deck with cards available in the store, and they just gave them to me. So one of the reasons I love this deck is because it's a little bit sentimental for me as well, but there were a few problems with it. I was practicing at home and going to locals every week, but I felt it was so difficult to play it. I was always losing, which was fine because I was new, but it felt like the deck was just too weak, and it was the build. Of course it was the build. Obviously, because we created this deck with the cards available in the store, there were cards that were needed that were not available at the store. But I didn't know this. Like, I thought this was it. I thought this was how the deck was supposed to look. It wasn't until a few weeks later when someone at my locals got a hold of one of my Piedmon Ace to read it, and they asked me if I was running 4 of them. And then I realized I was not. I only had 1. And that's probably why I could never get to bulk Bodemon. So I went online, I made myself a card market account. I mean, I had to learn how it works as well because I was coming from eBay and it was a bit weird, and tried my first attempt at fixing the deck. And it kind of worked. I was still losing to my locals, but I actually won my first ever casual game against someone who was not my partner at home. Again, I've tried my best to recreating the build I was using, so here's the list. I believe this is what I was using back then, if you want to have a go at it, but the reason I don't remember exactly is because I wanted to experiment a little bit and I started making some changes. I was basically trying to combine it with the Myotismon deck, which introduced cards like the Arukenimon and Mamimon Tamer, because basically I read online that this was better and made the deck a little bit faster. Obviously it didn't work, probably because I didn't know how to use it properly. It felt like the deck wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, searches were not giving me the cards I wanted, and I was a bit confused by the new Tamers, because at this point, this was the first time that I had to use Tamers at all. I mean, I had the NPC thing, but I never really liked it and I never really used it. So yeah, I never even got to play it on my locals because I was so frustrated with it. I'll show you the build I had, but please go easy on me. I was very new when I did this. I think at some point I'll try to fix it or return it to like a pure NSO build, even if it's just to use as a fun deck. And before we continue, like and subscribe and all of that before I forget to ask you. And they're doing something called Hype now. I don't know what it does, but if you want to do it, I'm sure it will help me out a lot. All right, let's move on. As I was playing NSO, I started to look at other decks that were more popular and more relevant and more competitive. I had faced a few of them like Royal Knights and 7 Demon Lords, but the game style didn't really click for me. And then I discovered that there was actually a deck that was meta based on one of my favorite Digimon from Tamers, which was Sakuyamon, because I'm a basic. So this time I decided that I would just find a list online and just stick to it, which meant a few weeks of buying cards until I had the deck that I could play. But then I also discovered that this hobby wasn't going to be cheap, and that if I wanted to build a deck at its best, I would have to say goodbye to my wallet, specifically with Shine Greymon Ruin mode. What this meant is that I had to go off script and find an alternative by myself. And luckily enough, one of the cards people were recommending for this was Bolt Bodemon, the same one that I was using in my NSO deck. So even if my deck was not the best version it could be, I honestly was just happy I could even play it. And then I started testing it at home, and I started questioning my life choices. I did not enjoy it at all. It was too stressful. At some point in the game, I had so many cards in my hand, I didn't know what to do with them. And I also kept forgetting inherited effects all the time. It was a mess. But I had spent so much money on it already that I just wanted to make it work, so I took it to my locals. I mean, it was not terrible, to be honest. I think I actually won a game, but I was so slow. And it also looked like I was playing a solitaire game sometimes with all the effects. And yeah, that stressed me out a little bit because I felt like I was frustrating everyone. I actually stopped playing it after that. I decided that it was just not for me, as much as I like Sakuyamon as a Digimon. But this was honestly not the last time I would use it. I am going to get a little bit ahead of myself, but just after they announced the latest ban list and Sakuyamon was hit, I decided to give it one last chance with my current build at my locals after having played other decks for quite some time at that point. And I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I was still very slow, but I am slow with every deck, so that was fine. But the good thing is that I was not overwhelmed anymore, and all of the interactions started to make sense. I even won a few games actually. Honestly, I think I just picked this deck at a point where I did not have the experience to understand how to use it. And I decided to go all in before even attempting to understand if I would like the playstyle. This is my current list for it. I have not updated it after the ban, even though I know it's possible, because I'm just waiting until December to see how it changes. Around the time I was getting so frustrated with Sakuyamon, Bandai released two new starter decks, ST20 and ST21, based on the first adventure show. I was immediately interested because I loved the original adventure, and by the looks of it, there were conversations online saying that they were actually going to be good. So I decided to go to the release event for these decks. You can actually listen to me talking about that in this video. I don't know where the link appears. And I got both of them. From the event, I already knew I was going to enjoy playing this deck, but I knew that I needed a list that makes both starter decks to be competitive. This time I went to YouTube and used the list from a vault. I'll link his video in the description in case you want to watch it. I did use that deck for a while, but then I started experimenting with it a little bit. I switched Metal Greymon with School Greymon because of a combo I saw on Niagara Regionals where you can give Raid and Retaliation to one of your lower level Digimon, and then potentially use Raid to attack a higher level Digimon from your opponent, deleting it with Retaliation. I also removed Lilymon and Zuramon and added a promo War Greymon to the deck. This is actually the list I used when I was playing Adventure, and you'll notice that I kept the Omnimon as like a win more card, and it actually won me some games. I actually played this deck quite a bit and had a ton of fun doing it. I didn't really win that much, but it was probably the most fun I had since starting out in the Digimon TCG. And then Bandai released EX9, which added a bit of support for the adventure deck with Metal Greymon Ultras mode, Wargurumon Sagittarius mode, and a new Mat and Tamer. This was interesting to me because now there was a legitimate way to play an Omnimon in the deck and getting it back from trash if needed. And this set also introduced a new Omnimon Ultra S that would fit very well here. So I modified my adventure deck to add the Ultra S top end, and I decided to turn to you, the people who watch my channel, for help improving the build and getting used to the playstyle. To date, that was probably the most fun I've had on stream, And I really appreciate the small community we've built here and how they continue to support me and the channel. This is the most up-to-date build that I still play occasionally. And I say occasionally because even though this deck is really fun, I find it to be a little bit less consistent than a pure adventure build. Although when it works really well. Very soon after I started with the Digimon TCG, I bought myself the Beelzemon Advanced deck. This was mainly because I love Beelzemon, and reviews of this deck online said it was pretty good when it came out. This was around the time where I was playing my NSO deck, so my knowledge of the game was not very good. I gave it one go, and I absolutely hated it. I did not understand how this deck worked at all, and I didn't get what was the point of trashing so many cards all the time. I felt like I was shooting myself in the foot. So I decided to park the idea. I knew the deck wasn't competitive at the time anyway, and that my own ability to play it was just not there. So I moved on. That was until EX10 came out with new support for Beelzemon. I wanted to go back to the deck, but I also didn't want to make the same mistake I made with Sekuyamon. So before I set out to building the new version of the deck, I, once again, asked my viewers for help. The goal was to play the old Beelzemon deck first to understand why I didn't like it and how to play it properly. And oh boy, did I get a reality check. The first issue was that I was using the SD14 build that comes out of the box, instead of the Beelzemon build that most people back then were using. So the deck was never really going to feel great as I was playing it. They gave me a list of how the deck should look like and then played with me, teaching me combos and win conditions. And by the end of the stream, I was pretty confident I liked this deck a lot. And again, I feel the need to thank my awesome community for all of the help and support. You are awesome, and I really appreciate you. What this meant is that I decided to build a deck with the new EX10 support. I found a list online, and with the knowledge I had from playing the previous version of the deck, made a few changes that made it feel better for me. And then I playtested it a fair amount myself before going to my locals with it. Here's the full list I'm currently using. The result was that I won the most games I've ever won at my locals, and I ended up in the middle of the table instead of the bottom, which is where I usually end up. And yeah, I was really pleased with that. So that's where I am at the moment. What's next for me? In terms of decks, I'm looking forward to the new Sekuyamon. I really enjoyed the last few times I played it, and I can't wait to see how the new version plays in real life. I also want to build Magnamon X. This is a deck that I've played against a few times, and I always thought it was so cool. I actually have quite a few of the cards I need already, so I might be playing it pretty soon. I don't know. And then in terms of what I need to improve personally, well, there's quite a few things. First of all, I'm slow. I'm really slow. Normally, I'd say it takes me around 35 minutes to finish the first game if I'm playing to the best of 3, which makes the second game super stressful and I think can be frustrating for my opponents. I'm not really sure how to do this because it happens even when I know my deck really well. I just take too much time thinking about the next play. And then related to this is that I need to get better at playing under pressure, because when games need to be fast, I get overwhelmed and I misplay a lot. I basically give up in my head before the game even starts. I'm not really sure how to solve this, but if you have any advice, please leave it in the comments. Another issue I have to solve is that I get overconfident. I've lost count on how many times I've left my opponent with 0 security, having my whole stack intact, and then I just lose on that turn. I need to get better at managing the memory I have and try to finish the game as soon as possible instead of thinking, oh, I'll definitely win this in the next turn. Also, I welcome any advice regarding my decks. I'm only a beginner and I know some of the decisions I took regarding my builds might not be the best, but I'm always trying to improve and found that the best way to do it is to just lean on the community for support. And yeah, that's about it. I'd love to know about your own experience learning the game and what decks you are enjoying at the moment or wish they'd get more support to play them again. So please feel free to tell me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and all of that, you know what to do. And see you in the next one. Bye.